First headline from the Fraser Institute saying equalization is broken. In 15 of the last 25 years, one or more provinces with higher living standards per person GDP received equalization, while provinces with lower living standards did not. And they directly cite Ontario receiving equalization payments from 2009 to 2018, while British Columbia received zero payments, even though BC had a lower GDP per person than Ontario in each of those 10 years. Why
Wow.
is this formula so broken, and why is there no political will to fix it? Is it just a vote buying scheme at this point, Stockwell?
It largely is. I think
Okay.
its intention, its intention was good. And as former finance minister in Alberta, we had to deal with the headaches constantly of how much money was going to be taken from Alberta to support other provinces. But I just quickly, one of the real flaws in that equalization agreement, it was set up, as you know, Pierre Trudeau was behind this, and it was set up to supposedly help provinces that didn't have an ability to raise the same amount of taxes as other provinces. But what it never took into account, and it still doesn't, is bad management and different economic policy in other provinces. So, for instance, in 1993, when Bob Rae, and Bob Rae's a friend of mine, but when he was premier of Ontario, running the NDP government, they were running on socialist economic policies, which will always cause an economic downturn, which will always make entrepreneurs and innovators who hire people leave the province. And Alberta, we took quite a different approach. We were doing serious cost cutting. We were lowering taxes. We were really tightening the government belt. Because of that, we were attracting business, and we had to fund or subsidize bad economic policy in Ontario. So that really needs to be looked at this definition of ability to raise taxes. If you can't raise taxes in your province because of bad economic policy, you shouldn't be bailed out and subsidized by other provinces who are willing to be more fiscally prudent.
Well, and there has been examples of these have not provinces refusing to develop their natural resources, as is the case with Quebec. They have a natural gas field that they could develop. Uh, and they don't, because why would they if you can just take a payment taken from the pockets of Albertans? But also there's this inequity in social programs. So I don't even know what the per day Quebec daycare was, but I remember when it came onto my radar, and it was $7 a day daycare in Quebec that was basically being subsidized by people in the West. And when I believe that that completely strays from the original intent of the equalization program.
Right, that you've hit a good point there. I was talking
Yeah.
about the economic policy, but social policy for sure. Social policies that Alberta would have seen are completely unaffordable and unnecessary. For instance, in back in those days when I was working with Ralph Klein, as well, you're way too young to remember, but
Oh
we
no.
were actually requiring people who were physically and mentally fit and capable to work or go to school and not accept passive welfare. And that actually had a tremendous positive effect throughout our economy. Got a lot of people working who were just sitting around. So again, another example of when one province takes a responsible approach to how they're funding, as you mentioned here, social programs, and another is not taking a responsible approach, and the responsible province will pay a penalty by subsidizing the bad policies of another province.
Let's move ahead because we want to get as much out of Stockwell Day as he was here. Alberta's doing well, I think, in spite of the federal government. And for me, this is just a reason why I'm a independence-minded person, is because it feels as though we have an anchor around our leg in Ottawa. But this is a good news story. Alberta is responsible for nearly 80% of all the new jobs in Canada. And I think that number is going to tick up even more with the Meta investment. There were 2,677,000 and change people employed in Alberta of last month, up 3% from last year, while total employment across Canada grew only by half a percentage point. I'll go to Stockwell on this.
Well, again, and as you quite rightly said, this announcement, the Meta announcement, it's fantastic. I mean,
Mhm.
Meta is $1 trillion company, as people know. People might not be aware, 40% of 3.5 billion people in the world use Meta products, whether that's, Facebook, Instagram, Messenger. So that's 40% of the world is using that company, and that company has decided to make Alberta its largest ever foreign investment. That's fantastic news. It's great on the job front. It's just great on so many levels. And the investment, they've come a long way in terms of the technology already, in terms of building these plants. I do think you're going to get the federal government stepping up and taking credit. And that's not quite fair, but life is not fair. But again, Alberta under Prime Minister Carney has some very sound economic policies, got some very common sense taxation policies. They're not driving away and causing to flee, the inventors, the innovators, and the entrepreneurs. And so because of that, and obviously the climate and a lot of other favorable realities for Alberta, Alberta lands this one. Yes, let the Prime Minister, he'll in his job report federally, this breakthrough for Alberta will reflect that. That's okay. Alberta is going to benefit hugely, and I just think it's a great move, even though the federal Liberals were trying to take credit for it.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the fact that, there aren't those roadblocks for this sort of investment as we see in the oil and gas sector. And without those roadblocks in the oil and gas sector, we're seeing private sector investment. Private sector investment will come to Alberta and it will come to the oil patch if it doesn't have hindrances. And looking at Meta without those hindrances, I think that's a proof point of that. Tamara?
That's an excellent point, actually, because they're handicapped. The oil and gas industry is handicapped in so many different ways. So, I mean, this is just a prime example of what happens when you move all that. And I do find it a little bit odd that our Minister of AI, Evan Solomon, hasn't issued a statement about this yet, or at least not that I've seen.
Yeah, he's trying to figure out a way to take credit for it. We've also got this story out of BC, and this is written by Simon Tuck over at the National Post. Letting BC charge a toll on the new Alberta pipeline is trade barriers on steroids. And the federal government is letting BC take royalties on oil owned by the people of Alberta in the new West Coast pipeline. And the concern is that this could open up a Pandora's box for provinces charging others. This could be a precedent-setting deal where, in a country where Prime Minister Mark Carney has publicly said that he would remove trade barriers, this looks to me like a trade barrier just by another name. I'll go to Stockwell.
Well, it is. It's going to be problematic. I think there was some feeling that because this pipeline route was not going to go through the northern part of BC, so the so-called tanker ban was not going to be affected because it was going to bring so many benefits to BC. Premier Eby originally came out sounding like he was going to oppose it, which is completely ridiculous. Part of the reason BC is having such huge economic problems now. But to allow tolling of this, certainly there can be costs that legitimately fall on a province that should be mitigated. But the aspect of tolling, this is not going to go well. I think Premier Smith obviously has suggested concerns about this. She still wants, and the pipeline will go ahead, but this has to be worked out. Other provinces, it would be helpful if they joined in and said, this is a problem, even though it doesn't affect them, because it could someday, they could be polled in some other area or told they're going to get told by the federal government. So it's a problem, and they need to get this worked out.